Okay, everybody told me I was going to die. I applied to Sir Ranulph Fiennes' Transglobe Expedition Trust for funding, and they came back, they consulted their expert, and they came back saying the expedition was impossible. The only people who actually told me that it was possible to do this expedition were my family and friends, but that meant slightly less because they hadn't got a fucking clue what they were talking about. I started the expedition with a friend of mine called Luke Collier. He was a fellow expedition leader. But from the very start, this is the top of Nevada Mismi, of which the source of the Amazon Springs. We started not to get on. It was horrible. It was like a bad marriage. Literally, the way Luke drank his coffee in the morning would really fuck me off. And it just degenerated into this horrible situation where he took himself off and went home. Coincidentally, at that time, the expedition started to get a little bit more dangerous. We went into the red zone of Peru. This is a Rondero building. There's no police in this area. The police would be shot if they entered, so we had to walk straight through the middle of this area, and increasingly everyone said, you can't come through, you're a gringo, you're holding an HD video camera, you're going to get yourself killed. Coincidentally as well, this area spills into a very, very closed-off Amerindian area. These two are Ashaninka Indians. They guided me for one day, and I was basically looking for guides to take me to the next community all the way through. And it was, I suppose, psychologically, it was quite an unsettled time because there was no one with me that was a friend that would stay with me for a long period of time. Until I met the chap on the left, horribly out of focus slide, Cho. Cho was a forestry worker. Cho said, I'll walk with you for 5 days for the remaining part of the red zone, the drugs trafficking area. But he loved walking, and basically we got on really well. And he said, if you want, I'll just continue with you. And he never went home. He continued walking with me for the remaining 2 years of the expedition. These guys, in this village that we got, after being arrested at Arrow Point and threatened to be killed, we got hosted in this village at Arrow Point overnight by the very, very irate chief, who made the point that they're autonomous and they didn't want us walking through this area. The only way we could walk through is to hire them as guides. I ended up being guides with the chief, who was this incredibly scary bloke, and we sort of we used the same pack rafts as Al did to cross Iceland. We shared a pack raft because we didn't have enough pack rafts to go around with this chief, and we became buddies, and it was a really nice thing that he was the guy that I was the most scared of in the whole expedition, yet he became my pack raft buddy, and he walked with me for 47 days in the end. It was quite... I have to admit, I didn't enjoy my expedition either. I can't remember who just said that they were depressed. I was fucking depressed. It was miserable. I don't know why I did it, actually. Everything from the ants to the mosquitoes to everything really, really got me down until this chap, the guy on the right, arrived. Keith Ducatel, he's a professional expedition photographer. He arrived for a month, and literally it was just that ability to speak English to someone. It was month 8 of the expedition, and I'd not been speaking English to anyone since Luke had left very early on. And it just brought me back out of this period of very, very serious negativity, really. Cho and I continued after Luke left, and because we'd run out of money, our main sponsor pulled out of the expedition, so we had to cut away from the river, and it made the whole thing a lot more serious, a lot more dangerous, actually. We were away from the river, and we had to live off our wits, and it was quite a survival expedition, but mentally, I actually found this quite a nice part of the expedition, because we ended up sort of thriving. This is with a very, very serious explorer called Helen Skelton, who was a BBC presenter who was kayaking the Amazon at the time, and you'd never guess where Helen Skelton's hand is at the time that this photo was taken. But this, for me, psychologically, and the reason I'm sort of dwelling on psychologicalness of the expedition was that was the hardest part of this. This is appalling, Sly. That was the hardest part of the expedition for me. It was the mental side. There's a very small scar of leishmaniasis, and this could have mutated into a version that eats away your soft palate, leaving you a sort of hole in the face, which I didn't really want to happen. And I suppose all of those sort of physical illnesses got me down, I have to say. This is me on being a bit depressed. We'd been through quite a lot by this stage, which is 2 years into the expedition. We've got 4 months left to go. And it was the mundane things that was really getting me down. I found it really, really difficult to pick myself up and be positive. A lot of anything that went wrong, I latched onto and got quite angry about it. This slide it's not an earthworm. It looks like an earthworm, doesn't it? But it's a false water cobra. It's about 2 meters long, and this was only indicative because it basically it showed me that there was a lot going on that I wasn't even looking at. I was so focused on finishing this expedition that I wasn't even looking at all the wildlife around me. I started doing a little bit of internet research into the brain, because that was a part of the research of the expedition that I hadn't researched at all, and I was a complete novice at. And I actually used the sat phone to call a neuro-linguistic programming expert, and he coached me through ways of picking myself out of this quite dark part of the expedition. He got me to envisage this guy, Mark Hale, who was my first sergeant major in the army. He was a very inspirational guy to me, and basically it was on the sort of understanding that the reason I was finding this so difficult is there was no social group around me. I used Mark. It really helped me pick myself up and continue the expedition. The story is made a little bit more pertinent by the fact that Mark was shot dead. Well, in fact, he was killed in an explosion in Afghanistan while I was walking, left behind his wife and 2 daughters, which made it all the more pertinent, I suppose, that he really continued to inspire me even after his death. We continued the expedition. The last 4 months were actually a lot more jolly. The routine that was around living in the jungle, that's what kept us going. We even took flour into the jungle. We made piranha on croûte, and the little things like that. Literally, it was taking flour with us that got us through the expedition. We'd have this little ceremony in the evening where Cho would be really meticulous and make sure that every side of the piranha on croûte was cooked properly. We finished the expedition on the 9th of August last year, and you can see the look on Cho's face. That guy deserves a huge amount of credit. He walked with me for the remaining 2 years knowing that he would never be able to say that he's walked the full length of the Amazon River, but you can look at the expression on his face. He is so happy and utterly selfless. He'd never been to the sea before. He'd lived in a landlocked part of Peru, and I think one of the things that I really learned from the whole trip was that I thought the whole thing was about being independent, being self-reliant, and it wasn't really. The reason I got through it was from being humbled over and over again, and from recognising the strengths in other people and from drawing on their strengths and ending up achieving something that I really wouldn't have been able to do on my own. Thank you very much.